Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're decoding what is arguably one of the most critical, life-saving documents in the entire UK gas industry. We're talking about the newly updated IGEM UP/1B, Edition 4. We're going to break down this essential safety standard for gas operatives, and honestly, whether you're a seasoned veteran engineer or you're literally just stepping into the field today, you need this intelligence briefing. This isn't just boring paperwork, it's the frontline defense for public safety.
So think about it for a second. When does a routine gas check become a critical safety mission? Well, the answer is every single time you connect a gauge. We really shouldn't look at this standard as just some dry technical manual. It is the literal, physical barrier preventing catastrophic gas explosions in homes and businesses. It gives you the exact parameters to know without a shadow of a doubt that a system is tight, secure, and totally safe to operate.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our mission plan. We'll quickly cover the introduction and purpose, scope details, legal duties, essential equipment, and finally, the actual testing procedure. Let's get right to it.
Section 1, Introduction and Core Purpose. So Edition 4 completely supersedes the older standard and becomes fully effective by October 1st, 2026. This transition period gives the industry a little time to adapt, but really, the expectation is that operatives adopt these updated procedures as soon as reasonably practicable. So what is it exactly? Well, UPS-1B Edition 4 is the definitive standard detailing tightness testing and direct purging for small liquefied petroleum gas and air mixtures, natural gas, and standard LPG installations. And actually, here's a fantastic modernization in this fourth edition. For the purposes of this standard, natural gas now explicitly includes blends containing up to 20% hydrogen. That's huge. It's a standard built for the energy landscape of today and tomorrow.
Moving on to Section 2, Scope. Basically, does this actually apply to you? Figuring out if you're actually supposed to be operating under this specific standard is step 1. Applying the wrong testing standard to an installation can lead to false passes, and that creates incredibly dangerous conditions. And that brings us to the absolute magic number, 0.035 cubic meters. That is the maximum installation volume this standard covers. If you run your calculations and your installation volume exceeds 0.035 cubic meters, you literally have to abort this specific standard immediately. You've outgrown UP/1B, and you need to pivot to standards like UP/1 or 1A. But wait, volume isn't the whole shebang. There are other strict operational boundaries that keep an engineer safely within the scope here. The maximum operating pressure at the outlet of the emergency control valve cannot exceed 2 bar. Also, the nominal bore of the pipework must be 35 millimeters or less. And if a meter is fitted, its badged capacity cannot exceed 16 cubic meters per hour. If you tick all those boxes, you are definitely in the right place.
Now, what's really cool about the standard's built-in decision tree is how it practically guides you. It's like a giant puzzle, but they solved it for you. Instead of leaving you to cross-reference pages of dense text, it just asks you to follow a flowchart. By checking your pressure, your meter capacity, your volume, and your pipe diameter, you can visually confirm your operational standard. It completely removes the guesswork and points you exactly to UP/1B, 1C, 1A, or UP/1, depending on the system specs. Section 3, Legal and Safety Duties.
We really need to remember that compliance isn't just some friendly industry best practice. It's tied directly to health and safety legislation in Great Britain. This standard exists to protect not just you, the operative, but the general public. The text leaves absolutely no room for ambiguity here, stating clearly, any person engaged in tightness testing or purging of pipework must be a competent person. But, what does competent actually mean? Well, the standard defines it explicitly. True competence requires enough knowledge, practical skill, and experience to carry out the job in hand safely with due regard to good working practice. Basically, you can't just have the theory, you need the practical chops to back it up.
Section 4, Essential Test Equipment. You can have all the competence in the world, but if your gear is faulty, the mission fails. The standard dictates strict precision for this loadout phase. Electronic gauges must be capable of reading down to 0.1 millibar, and crucially, they have to be calibrated at least every 12 months. Now, fluid or water gauges don't require that formal calibration, but they must read to 0.5 millibar and be meticulously maintained. Plus, if you're stepping into a hazardous area, maybe you're hunting for a suspected gas escape, your electronic equipment must be specifically certified for use in explosive atmospheres. Because again, you never guess with gas, you test with precision.
Okay, this is a massive point on chemical safety during your tests. You must only use proprietary leak detection fluids, LDFs, that comply with BS EN 1491. You hear about people using standard detergents or washing up liquids? No way, never do that. Why? Because the standard clearly warns that certain chemicals, like ammonia and chlorides found in everyday household soaps, can cause unwanted effects like stress corrosion cracking. This is especially true on stainless steel, copper, or brass components. If you use the wrong fluid, it could literally eat away at the exact pipework you were trying to protect.
Section 5. The tightness test procedure. The main event.
So let's see how all this builds into the climax of our explainer, the actual execution on the ground. Everything we've discussed so far prepares you for this exact phase. First up, we have to establish the fundamental difference in our past criteria. If you're testing a brand new installation, the tolerance is 0. The pipework is expected to be nominally gas tight, meaning absolutely 0 perceptible leakage. However, for existing installations where valves might be older and slightly worn, a very specific, defined maximum level of leakage is permitted. The execution requires a highly structured sequence for a reason. Step 1. Always visually inspect the installation first to make sure all joints are correctly made and exposed ways are sealed. Step 2. Turn off the gas at the supply control valve. Step 3. Connect your calibrated pressure gauge. Step 4. Conduct the LEPI test. And finally, Step 5. Conduct the full tightness test. Following this methodical approach is absolutely the only way to guarantee a safe and accurate result. Let's zoom in on Step 4 for a second. The LEPI test is completely critical. You adjust the pressure in the system to between 7 and 10 millibars, close the valve, and wait for a 1-minute period. The entire purpose of this test is to ensure the supply valve itself isn't silently leaking gas into your system. If that pressure rises during this minute, the valve is letting gas by, and your main tightness test would be entirely ruined before it even begins. So, the crucial point is knowing your allowable limits once you reach the actual tightness test on an existing system. The standard lays out a table detailing the exact allowable pressure drop for existing LPG and air installations. If the installation volume is less than or equal to 0.025 cubic meters, a maximum drop of 1.5 millibars is permissible. But if the volume is slightly larger, up to that 0.035 limit we talked about earlier, the standard tightens up, permitting only a 0.5 millibar drop. The parameters scale directly with the size of the system. But here is the kicker, and it's the most important human element of the test. Let's say you watch the gauge for the required 2 minutes, and the pressure drop is perfectly within the acceptable limits we just mentioned. You might think you're in the clear, right? Actually, no. If there is any smell of gas detected whatsoever, the installation is an instant fail. The standard makes it crystal clear. Perceptible movement within limits plus no smell of gas equals a pass. If you smell gas, your nose trumps the numbers. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole process for natural gas systems. The standard provides a master map, a complete step-by-step flowchart for tightness testing NG installations. It walks you from the initial visual inspection at the top, down through the LEPI test, into stabilization, and finally the gauge movement checks. Having this flowchart handy ensures you literally never skip a critical phase, even in the heat of the moment. Okay, so what happens if the test fails? The operational protocol is super strict. You have to attempt to trace and repair the escapes using your approved leak detection fluid. If you're successful, you must retest the entire installation from scratch. However, if a repair is impossible at that time, you cannot just pack up and walk away. You must make the installation safe by disconnecting the appliance or the relevant section of pipework and sealing all exposed gasways with an appropriate fitting. Lock it down. Which leaves us with this final thought. IGEM Up 1B Edition 4 provides the perfect blueprint for safety. You know the strict volume limits. You know the exact calibration required for your gear. You know the difference between a let-by test and a tightness test. But the ultimate variable is you. Will you follow the procedure perfectly, without skipping a single step, to catch this invisible threat every single time? Because respecting this standard isn't just about passing an audit, it is a daily commitment to saving lives. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer, and stay safe out there.